So this happened sometime at a day camp, maybe in 2010 or 2011 in the summer. And I was around maybe 11, 12, or 13 at the time. Now, I used to take this little day summer camp, which took place at a community center, which had a public pool. The public pool has a very large, big pool, and of course, it had a small pool. So I ended up deciding to go to the camp, as I've been doing day camp for many years, and whenever they went swimming, we went swimming too, as it was a lot of fun. As I was doing the swim camp with my brother, I was at the big pool one day, mainly just chilling and swimming and doing what we normally did. All of a sudden, I ended up looking up what seems to be the big pool, and I went in where all my the other camp counselors and kids went. I went into the big pool too, and I had to do the swim test, so I was able to go to the deep end. As soon as I passed the swim test without any problem, I went to the deep end of the pool. There were a couple kids there, but not all the kids were able to pass the swim test. I was one of those kids that passed it without a problem. So, whenever I went to the big pool, I always went to the deep end, as I really enjoyed using the deep end. I liked using the diving board and etc. And a lot of kids, my age, were really rambunctious at the time. As I was swimming in the deep end, I noticed there was something way at the bottom of the pool, looked like a big black blob. At first, it looked like maybe it might have been someone's swim trunks, but it didn't look like it was a hole in the pool or anything, as it was too far down for me to actually have a better closer look. So I went underwater for a bit to get to touch the bottom of the pool, which was swimming back up. Just as I was getting close, when I got to the surface to take some few breaths, a few seconds later, whatever that big black blob was, I felt a hand grab onto my leg and try to pull me down towards the water. I began splashing frantically and crying for help, which of course I got attention of the lifeguards. The lifeguards could see that there was a man grabbing me and pulling me down. One of them called the cops when I tried kicking the man as hard as I could at his face. I kicked it more and more, hoping he would let me go. At the verge of scared of being drowned, I kicked him as hard as I could in the nose so hard that whatever it was, he let go and I was able to get back up to the surface. Thinking I was almost drowned was a very scary re-experience, and that man eventually got back up. He was unconscious though, so when the cops arrived and they took the man and they called the ambulance, I received some shocking news about this man from the camp counselors near the end of the day. That man was underwater for God knows how long, but of course, when they identify him, they couldn't really see if it was actually the real man or not, but it felt so real. Eventually, we found out that somebody actually placed what seemed to be an animatronic man that was capable of being underwater. He was somehow placed under the water at the bottom of the pool of the community pool, and nobody had saw him walk in. This honestly terrifies me, knowing that this man, even though it was animatronic, could have ruined my life. This just happened to me about sometime maybe a week or so ago, and this honestly really freaked me out quite a bit. At a riding stable that was on a certain place, which was about 2 hours away from where I am, I went down there as it was a day that I wanted to do a trail ride. The trail ride was about 2 hours long. There are certain trails that has rocky terrain, steep hills, and etc. But however, something about this trail ride really made me freak a little bit out. Didn't really scream or anything, but just kind of been scared a little bit. However, this honestly is not really the type of story that makes you jump out of your pants or anything like that, or jump out of your seat. I was on this horse, which we'll call him Piper, and I was going through the trail with one of the leaders. Now, one of the leaders at the time of this story was riding another horse, which was Katana. Now, as we were going up the hill of a steep hill, I've been hearing some weird, strange things, such as trees and branches snapping. Now, I thought it could have been other riders with their horses riding in the other trails, which we have like a whole bunch of trails at the time, so it was not too big of a surprise. However, something really weird began happening when I got up to the top of a steep hill, and we ended up going through the forest path. Piper ended up looking over, and he could have swore that he heard something. I thought that he might have been hearing other people or perhaps other riders, so we continued. As we were going further down what seemed to be the path, my guide ended up stopping her horse as her horse started to act a little weird. She said that her horse has been acting weird and asked if mine was acting weird too. I said to him that I have no idea what was going on at the time, so it was pretty weird. Suddenly we ended up looking over to see that there was someone or something walking in the tree line. It wasn't very close to us, it was a couple feet away, so I thought that it could have been a hiker or maybe a bear, but I couldn't see for myself. It looked like something really black. It was a big and black creature. I honestly had no idea what it was. At first I thought maybe it might have been someone or something, but I honestly had no idea why this thing was standing. I honestly couldn't really get a good glimpse of what this creature really was, so I thought it might have been a bear, as bears do wander around the area every now and then. All of a sudden, I looked over to see that whatever it was had a cone-shaped head, and that's when we realized that we had to move away from whatever it was. We walked away from that whatever that thing was, and we got back to the barn as soon after we continued down our trail ride. I had no idea what that thing was. I am assuming that it might have been Bigfoot or something, but whatever it was, I honestly hope that the next time I do a trail ride that I don't see that creature again. And I still wonder to this day why it was there or what it wanted, but I have assumed that I had no idea what it really was. This took place when I was home alone. I believe this happened sometime maybe a few years ago. My dad was at work at the time, and it was 2019, and my mom was out of town looking at her new house. At the time of this story, I was home alone as my brother was out doing stuff with a few of it, which would seem to be a day camp or something. So I was home alone for a while. Well, I was home alone basically playing on my computer and probably playing on my Xbox One. And as I was doing this, however, I decided to go get something to eat from Mary Brown's. I left my house and locked it, of course, and went over to get food, which of course I had to leave my dog home alone for at least a few minutes. I wasn't going to be long, so I wouldn't have to take him with me, and plus I really couldn't go in the store without anyone to be able to look after him. When I got to Mary Brown's, ordered my food and got home, my cats started to act really weird. I thought that maybe they were not feeling good, or maybe perhaps they were having an off day, but of course I noticed something weird on the youngest one, Roughnut. She ended up looking as if she was looking for something. It honestly really made me confused, but I figured maybe this was just her normal cat behavior, so I went back to doing what I did on my computer. Shortly afterwards, as my dog was lying down on the couch, one of the cats was meowing at the back door where I was. I was just looking at my computer, mainly just watching YouTube videos and whatnot, and then I'm turning around to see that whatever it was something that the cats were looking at. They were meowing and started hissing aggressively. I honestly was confused on what it was, and I looked to see that there was someone in my backyard. Now, it looked like a woman, but she looked like she had a bloody dress, and she looked like she had what seemed to be a knife. I honestly nearly freaked out when I saw this, so I called the cops, and did what they said. By the time the police arrived, they looked through through the backyard of my house, but they couldn't find the woman. I described the woman as best I can to the officers, and they looked, but they couldn't find her. They asked me some questions like if I've seen this woman or something, which I honestly had no idea. To be honest, I don't even know why this woman was there, but of course they couldn't really find the woman. Now, in the other yards that the officers looked, they said that people in my area have been complaining and saying about that exact woman that I said that I saw. Now, this was honestly very surprising, as there was even no trace of her anywhere being there. No fingerprints, nothing. This was honestly a pretty messed up experience, that I was home alone, and whatever I encountered that day was completely paranormal. This happened sometime when I was in high school. I think sometime in 2012. And this honestly was around the beginning of my first year at high school. Now, at the time of this story, there was this large house, old house, that was abandoned. But back then, it used to be a house or a shed that many students would use for stuff during the school year. Of course, unfortunately, it was abandoned due to lack of usage into it, and as of this, it used to be a school shed at the time. It was not far in the forest, but it was located somewhere. Many students would go there just to, break in and that, which of course they had to board up the windows and the doors as good as they could so nobody could get in. My friends and I were pretty stupid as we were teenagers, so we obviously had stupid minds at the time. We were going to the school, and as we were going to the school at the time, we decided to go for a walk in the woods during gym class, and we saw what seemed to be the forest. Now, we went down the forest, and it wasn't long until we got to this big opening of the woods where we saw a house. Now, the house was abandoned, not surprisingly, though, so we were very surprised to see the house. We walked over towards the house, and we found out that this was the old shed that the school used to use many years ago. We decided that we could check out the inside of the house and do some exploring, as there were no teachers around and there were no other students. So we went inside the house. Once we got in there, though, there was some already entries of people breaking in, such as graffiti and etc. Didn't surprise me, as this was gonna happen eventually. We were honestly very surprised by what we were seeing. We honestly didn't even know what we were gonna do, but regardless, we ended up looking over to see that there was one or something inside. We thought it was maybe just some other student pulling a prank, but it turns out that wasn't the case not far later on. And there is a big reason why for that in a minute. We were honestly confused as to how they would be people there, as the funny thing was that everyone was basically out in class, but we ended up looking over to see that there was somebody outside out of the house. We thought that maybe it might have been a teacher, so we hid as best we could. They knocked on the door once we got inside the shed, but we had no idea if it was a student. We looked over to see whatever it was gone, and thinking maybe it was just some student trying to prank us or something. So we were exploring inside the house, and it wasn't long until we heard what seemed to be a really weird cackle. We honestly booked it out of that house, as we did not want to find out who or what was living in that house. By the time we got out of that abandoned house, we ended up running all the way back to the school. And once we got there, everyone asked if we were okay, and thankfully we said that we were okay, but we didn't tell them about this story or about what happened. fearing that we would have gotten into major trouble with the school. As of this, I don't know if that house is still there to this day, but I have never been back there since. And I certainly don't want to know who or what was with us in that house.